All right, welcome to Association Chat, an online discussion for the association community, where we warm ourselves by the virtual fire, welcoming thought leaders and trailblazers alike to join up in this online home for the association community. I'm the host of Association Chat, Kiki L'Italienne, and before we get started, I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to the Patreon patrons who support Association Chat. It takes many hours and lots of technology and lots of sweat equity and lots of love to make Association Chat come together. And the Association Chat Patreon patrons make it possible. So thank you. Thank you, Association Chat Patreon patrons. And if you feel like showing your support, then, and I hope that you do, then please consider joining Association Chat's Patreon patron group, and you can visit that website here at the bottom of the screen. Now, I want to just tell you that this is going to be an exciting discussion today, because almost everyone in the association community is dealing with trying to figure out how to better engage people with their online learning and their online events, because the face-to-face events are not happening the way that they used to. If at all, right? And so today we're talking with Hilary Howes. Now, Hilary is the CXO of Moonshot Event Production. And while Hilary is already famous, you may have already heard of her for her award-winning sets and lighting, she's now innovating in virtual events. And this is leading to more powerful and more meaningful online engagement. She's the VP of Communications for MPI, the Potomac Chapter, and she's been sharing her expertise on creative communication with MPI chapters, with ASAE, and with PCMA publications, as well as doing multiple interviews over the years. So I just want to say thank you so much, Hilary, for joining us.
It's really my pleasure. It's great to see you again and be here, with all the association friends that I, have made over the years.
It's, man, I tell you, it has been such a year. It's been such a year. So let's start out with just right there, because I feel like to blow past that, it's just kind of ridiculous. So I want to take stock of where we are now and where you are now. Just to say that when 2020 started, I am guessing that it did not, this today is not what you expected when we were celebrating the new year, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a total shock. I had, my career started decades ago designing sets and lights for costumes and for theater. And as time went on, I started doing it for associations and developing exhibits for them, and then live events. And so, really, when COVID happened, I tried to think through all my work and said, well, what do I do that doesn't involve meeting face to face? And of the 5 careers I've had, all of them required meeting face to face. But when I got down to, well, what did I do? So it is, what I have done is I've always been a visual storyteller. Mm-hmm. And so that's the through line, is I'm always communicating through the visuals, the experience, just the particular brand, or how to express a company or association authentically. And I realized that there was a new medium to do that in, and that was the world of virtual events. So, after spending, a month kind of shell-shocked and wondering, are events that I'm currently working on, will they possibly open? And literally, I had something was supposed to happen in June in the Bahamas, and when COVID hit, and it was like that all got put on hold pretty quick. And then
Right.
we were going to wait and see. And it's like, okay, we're going to have to pull the trigger at some point because, I've got a production train that has to get started.
Yeah. It's
So, yeah.
it's
So
been fascinating. I mean, and I think about the great work that you do, and of course, I've seen your work in action, so I know, just how amazing it is, and all of our event industry friends and just talented people who have had to take another look at how they're interacting with the business. And I don't think anyone doubts that we all have a better experience when we get together. But as we're all kind of looking around and saying, hey, wait a second, this is going on for a while. What now? Now there are these new challenges and new questions to answer. I know one of the big questions that's out there in the events industry, and of course, because associations have so many events, we have the same questions too, is, how is this going to change the events industry forever? And, what do you think might be coming? Like, what do you think is going to continue to change as when we're looking at the events industry?
That was one of my real worries, I think, at the beginning of this, is that I saw that online events, they've been around for 10 years. They hadn't gone anywhere for 10 years. And because of live events. And so in many ways, they were that poor stepchild. And they weren't producing the results that people wanted. And so everybody was had a great deal of trepidation. But we knew that what associations do is important, right? And that had to continue to happen. The question was, is it going to happen through an event experience? Or were people going to take a different approach? And if they were going to take a different approach, would they go to people who planned events to make that happen? And so that was a real question for me when we started. And I realized that I could provide some leadership there for people in the events industry to understand that, yes, even though an event is happening online, 80% of it is still the same. There's just that last 20% that's technology, and how we relate to each other, through video, that has to be kind of finessed at that point. So it's really important to keep events happening, although they have to be reimagined.
Yeah, I think that one of the challenges that we have is that because there are so many of our business models for associations are wrapped around having a key annual meeting that is a big revenue driver, or a trade show that's a big revenue driver, or maybe it's a lot of trade shows that are revenue drivers. Those have been hit so critically hard because what happened is, even when you had this virtual replacement that was put into place, they were either offered free or practically free. And that profit margin it was either, upside down, where there just wasn't one. It was like actually way more expensive, or there just wasn't as much of a profit margin. And so I think, there are a lot of questions and obviously a lot of focus on the negatives. What are some of the positives that you see that are coming from this approach to online virtual meetings?
Well, clearly, one of the major things is the data that sponsors and exhibitors get from an online meeting. It's much more robust than they would get in a trade show environment. And I think that to the extent that we leverage that and make it an ongoing experience, I think we're going to succeed. I think that the first things that happened were, what had to do quickly, right? And so it was virtually take exactly what your blueprint is and swap it into, a new medium that is completely different. And now we're getting to the point where we're starting to say, oh, okay, what we are really doing is we're producing a television show. And
Right.
that really requires production elements. It was okay for it to be in my kitchen before, and
I mean, I was telling Hilary before, I said it's good it's not in my kitchen. At least her kitchen looks so much better. But yeah, we're looking at these differently. I think that's a really great example to say that it's something like putting on a television show. I mean, it is still a production. Those production elements are all the way there. And so is that maybe one of the big lessons that you think that a lot of people need to take, is that it's not as simple as just taking the education and saying, okay, let's just, put this online, that it's more about those show elements?
Yeah. So in the virtual event meeting management class that I took, one of the most powerful images that came out of this was this idea that you're going to a football game. And when you're at the football game, there's all the energy of the crowd around you, and you can see the players. You might, if you're close, you can smell the players. I mean, it's a complete, sensory environment. You're cold. All these things go into it, right? But if you sit at home and you watch it on TV, it's a great experience too, because there's a guy talking about stats. There's overlays on the field that show you how far the next down is. There's somebody explaining just what the philosophy is behind it. So to make a rich, virtual experience out of a football game, it takes a lot of technology. It takes a lot of production. And so that needs to happen for us. We are right now for MPI Potomac, we're looking at taking our typical trade show, which, it's been called MACE in the past, and virtualizing it or hybridizing it. And so we're really looking at, are we going to have somebody or several people who, are just wearing GoPros, heading around backstage, talking to people, so you get a sense of the live environment, through your visual experience that you're having online. And it's really critical. And that's the kind of thing that, we're going to see going forward. Those production values, which is why I'm in production, is that those production values are going to be critically important if we're to overcome the Zoom fatigue that people are feeling,
I love this example because, I've been part of online events where they had an in-person, and this is before pre-COVID. It was when it was really kind of a hybrid experience, and they had an on-site in-person MC. They had an on-camera online MC that was like the virtual MC, who was really communicating with the audience and doing interviews with the keynotes when they got off the stage and all kinds of stuff like that. And, at the time, I guess I didn't really appreciate, we knew it was different, but I didn't really appreciate how necessary that would become to know some of that and see some of those examples a little bit later on, because it does take a different kind of mindset about the type of experience that you're creating, because you have to go from thinking about the online attendees as being these sort of nameless, faceless people passively taking information in at home, to how are you getting them engaged? How are you making them excited? How are you making it so that it's something they don't want to start working over here on their other screen and get pulled away from? And so this example of like football and how they do it with their online, reporting live online, reporting on the game, all of that.
And there are other ways to do it too. I mean, I've been in a 1,700 person Zoom call.
Yeah. Wow.
and where where they've got Zoomzilla surrounding the speakers, where they can see, they can see 400 faces at a time. Okay. And they're doing things to engage those people and have them, hold up, is there a cup? Is there something green in your room? And
Yeah.
and
Right.
so you get people to
And then
interact with the
yeah.
screen, right? And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of ways that you do that engagement, but literally with this hybrid event we're talking about, we're looking at two separate teams.
Yeah.
Like we're really going to have two complete different teams that are working on making a live event, and the other team working on making a virtual event. And of
Mm.
course, we'll be sharing speakers and so on. But that's what it comes down to.
Now, what are you seeing as far as, guiding people in the principles of creating a better online experience? Because I think, it's safe to say that I would say that the most popular version of creating some sort of online meeting experience, and it was just, I think, because of pure necessity, because people were just moving as quickly as they could to do something, was trying to convert things into, well, let's essentially just bring people on and do their presentations on like a Zoom or something like that. Um, how are you guiding people? What are the principles of creating a better online experience?
Well, I think the key is that you have to get to the big why, was why you're doing it. So it really is about strategy, because anytime you go to taking what you did before and apply it to a new medium, it's going to be as good as a sculptor who's painting something. It just you aren't going to get there. So what's important is that you really get down to what you're trying to achieve. And I think that's a real struggle for a lot of associations, and in particular, and I don't mean to throw anybody under the bus here, but for trade shows, we've been doing the same thing for at
Yeah.
least 50 years, probably longer. And many of us have said, I think it's kind of broken. I was formerly the senior national design manager for GES, and even in the early 2000s, and we were saying, we feel like the form wants something else now. And there was
Mhm.
some research we started doing back then that's coming to fruition now. I'm working with Bob Hughes, and we're right now we're doing a proposal or I should say a grant application for an innovation grant with ASAE, and so to take us to that next level.
Mhm.
A lot of research that has been going on. um, it will, I think, yield a new form for what have been trade shows, because we have to admit everything has changed. Trade shows
Yeah.
were originally for stuff, and
Yeah.
now it's about ideas. And so how you go about showing off ideas is completely different than how you go about showing off stuff, you
Yeah.
know?
And
So
we have a comment from YouTube, and they're saying stale. Yeah, things. Even before this,
yeah.
there were these questions about what can we do. We have all of this ability to, whether you're in person or doing this virtual, we have so many more capabilities than we used to,
Mhm.
and yet there wasn't any big impetus to drive real change. And so that probably is one of the biggest, I guess, silver linings to all of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say it is, because just as we were saying before we came on, we're all reevaluating what our lives are. It's like I don't have to go to the office anymore. What does that mean? So, yes, I work out of my kitchen, but what is that? I can roast and design at the same time. The same thing is happening for salespeople,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
trade shows have traditionally been a portion of the sales process, right?
Yeah.
And so sales is changing, in the world of the internet. At one time, you went to a salesperson for their expertise, what they knew about, and you couldn't find that stuff, all that info other places. Well, now info is everywhere, it's in your pocket.
Yeah.
So a lot of shift has gone. It's likely we won't have salespeople at some
Mhm.
point. It'll just be about customer education. And so, we've been seeing with association meetings for a long time how important, that the education portion has been in
Yes.
events, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's probably an ongoing trend. And I think that's something that we're going to see as we virtualize, and even once we unvirtualize, is that we're going to need to be educating and ongoing education, and
Yes.
and so it's kind of a way of rethinking that. And associations stand in a very pivotal position to be able to facilitate that change,
Mhm.
because within each company, by themselves, um, they they can't change. You have to facilitate very often for an entire industry to make transformational change.
Well, and that's such a great point that I think people outside of the association industry don't always really understand. They don't, I think because they don't understand the role of associations necessarily, and understanding that they represent entire industries, entire professions. So, some people call it a government light. It really is quite dramatic, the kind of power and influence that an association can have. And just so I see Josie's Fun Kitchen posted a comment over on YouTube, said, I worked with Hilary at GES and she was always pushing to make the event more immersive. So yeah, absolutely. That's why she's here. She is so amazing. But it is true. I think associations are right there, poised to make such a dramatic impact on so many things.
Yeah.
So, what have you seen that, and this is another real hot topic right now for everyone, is how are we providing value to the attendee, before, during, and after, when it's all virtual? Before, it might be, wow, we're going to send you this and have something waiting for you in your room when you arrive. And then we're going to, and that was a question beforehand. And now when people they're logging into their computers, there is no desk, like check-in desk to pick up the swag bag. There's like, how are you controlling the experience now? What are you seeing that's working?
What was interesting is I did go to an event that had a virtual check-in, and it was early on in all of this, and so they wanted to make sure that before you got there that you understood the platform and how it worked, and there was somebody one-on-one who was talking with you. Well, that was a registration person, and part registration, part greeter. So you felt like a personal connection right off the bat. And that same event, they sent a swag box that was impressive. I just, hands down, I've been to so many shows, all kinds of junk, whatever, but it's like, it was all top quality.
Yeah.
It was top quality, cup and top quality, whatever. But they also had little signs included so that you can hold up a sign that says, hey, you're getting it right, or to me, there's a heart for that, or whatever. So they're providing opportunities for interaction and stuff for you to communicate. There was a bumper sticker in there. I could put that in my car. Hey, I'm attending this thing.
Yeah. Well, and I love that too, because it is true that, and things that you can use for online participation, if they have those little signs that they can raise into the frame, they're not getting rid of those after after your meeting. They're going to hold on to them because when everybody
probably use them in another meeting.
Oh my gosh, so many. Wait, Zoom fatigue is not now a recognized statement, like a recognized phrase for no reason, you know?
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a fantastic idea. There's no reason to believe that you can't come up with something creative to get people excited. I also think that tangible element, that thing about, it's not so much about getting stuff that in and of itself, although I know a lot of people who like to just get stuff, but it's also, if it's tied in well to the theme of your meeting, to being used, it gets people excited, I think, about how am I going to use this? When am I going to use this? And they get more invested, right?
Well, and the cup that came had a a quote on it that was significant for that. And there's no reason that your sponsors, can't pay for those items that are in there, so that and they get their logo on it, and so there's an ongoing presence for them in the house of of the attendee. So I think that it's a real opportunity that hasn't been explored that much yet, because it does take a lot to put that all together. But that's that's an important production value that people are going to start using and be effective.
Yeah, one thing that I've seen, I've seen a couple conversations around this online has been the after. Everyone's so focused on the during, the trying to make sure that the format is right, or that they get enough people to actually engage and stay with it. But a lot of times they feel like once everything's done, it's like, it's all done. And I even saw someone say, and this is an interesting idea, that maybe we should just rethink the conference experience and to think about ongoing communication. Why try to put 2 days full of back-to-back sessions? Why not just roll it out as a series, and have it go spread out over time? What do you think about that?
Well, I think there's some value to both, because I think we still have a sense that there's this experience that's happening, and when you can have a communal experience, it can be very powerful. And so having, at a bare minimum, a chat space where you're connecting with people. It was great to hear from Josie, and it's and that kind of thing can create a sense of shared purpose and shared journey, right? And so, but also you're creating content, right, that could be shared throughout the year. And one of the things that I'm seeing associations doing is, if you're using an app or something, that app, you can continue to connect with people afterwards. You can continue to draw on those stories and so on through the app. And if not, if you're using a Facebook group or something, that can be really powerful too. Is that, hey, you all attended this. Maybe that's a place for a secondary chat or ongoing. Hey, I missed this question. What did you think about that? That's kind of a more long form chat room that gives you a chance to extend it over time and continue that community. And whether it's on Facebook or whatever, and maybe it's on everything, I don't know. But having that place that people continue the conversation is, I think, what's important, and having the materials continue to be available for people too.
Yeah. I think, that's one thing that it's funny as we're going along, not funny, haha, but, of course, we're all learning. This is a school for all of us. We are in school. It is in session. And every time somebody puts on a new online conference or online event, and we participate in it, we're all figuring out what works and what doesn't work, right? Because it's very difficult to say that there's one that just, they did everything right. There's usually something that you can pick from, and depending on your audience and what it is that you're trying to achieve, it's not one size fits all. So unfortunately, it's not a simple answer of just plug this technology solution in and it's all done for you. It's actually, you still have that work of creating the experience, of creating and bringing the content in there.
Yeah, as important as it is to know what you want to express, what the story you want to tell, it's also important to know who your audience is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because that's going to really color how you go about doing it. The way you produce something and talk to scientists is different than the way you produce and talk about something to lawyers.
Yeah.
They really, they're very different. And if you happen to get a really closely connected group, like they're all women lawyers, that's a whole nother thing, that and a different way you can connect. So
Yeah.
it's really important to get a good idea. And as we go through this, people are doing the reviews at the end and so on, and so we're getting the kind of feedback that's going to help us understand better and better, who are these people and what do they really want, what do they like, what do they don't like, and I think that's going to be producing a lot better.
There are a couple comments that came in and that I think we should look at and then talk about, because I have a follow-up question for you about this. But a Facebook user says, we all as leaders need to remember that expanding connection requires facilitation and staffing. Yes, people don't just do it. You got to help them along. You got to help them along. That's so true. And then Marjorie, and this is, she's a dear friend of mine, so talented. And she just actually put on an incredible virtual conference for community by associations. And so just an excellent, excellent thing. But Marjorie's brilliant. She says, online communities help extend the value of events before, during, and after the event. And that is true.
That's a really good point, because we focus on, we're event planners, so we're planning this event and it's going to be that one thing. But you're right, to extend the power of that, someone has to be assigned, to facilitate that kind of sharing and make sure that everything works well.
Yeah, and
there's a lot of that facilitation that's kind of going on for free right now, right?
Right.
But if it's well done, then we make even better strides.
Well, and that's one of the things that I wanted to follow up with you about, is just, I think that part of the situation is that because even if they have had or worked with event producers in the past who helped guide them through the process for an in-person event, a lot of times either the organizers can't work with event producers, don't have they don't think they have the time, or they don't have the money, or they don't even know who they are that would do online virtual events, right? It's like, who do I even go to for this? And so in that case, I think that that's another reason why we're not seeing we're seeing someone that, like an organization that might have a full-fledged in-person 3-day conference or something, go to a model where there's not a whole lot of hand-holding or transition people or anything like that. The people who sort of smooth the path and do this stuff in person. So I guess that's a big lead up to say, what do you think people really need to think about as far as having maybe additional roles or staff roles, volunteer roles in place to ease that, to make those transition periods easier for the overall experience?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that came out of my class again was this idea that a lot of people thought, oh, well, everything's free on the internet. And so before, you don't have to rent a room or, have any food and beverage. And it's like, well, okay, hold on a second now. All your travel costs, all your food and beverage, put that onto people who are going to make sure that this experience is good for your attendees, because you're going to need it. And I think one of the reasons for our Zoom fatigue is that didn't happen. And so, or they said, oh, well, we have to cut our budget, or we have to not charge for this, right? So we're not going to have the budget to do all the things that we really need to be doing. And they didn't know they needed to at that point. So I think that I hope that's turning around. People are realizing now that if you're presenting something of value, then you need to charge for it. And you need to charge for it because you need to make it a good experience for people. It's not enough to just have a great speaker. They've got to be supported correctly, or everyone's frustrated.
Well, that's another thing. I've seen where speakers will come on and they haven't been, I guess, properly prepared. They haven't, and it's interesting in several ways, because there's the speaker who is fantastic when they're in front of a live audience, but they are not used to or accustomed to doing anything online. And you could have keynotes that are paid $30,000 plus to show up on a stage, and they've earned every penny. And then they show up to do their presentation and it just falls flat.
Right.
On the other hand, there are some people who do really well when they're in this format, but they just haven't been known, or they haven't been recognized in that way. And I've also seen where things can go wrong, where they just haven't tested out the tech ahead of time. It's as simple as that, like the checklist of, is my microphone working? Is this working?
Yeah. No, speaker prep is like, there's two things that need to go on, and one is all the tech, right? You have to get the tech right, and there's different levels you're going to do that in, but there also has to be real life coaching, of the speakers, particularly if they're industry smart, but not necessarily presenting in front of a camera smart. And so it's really a matter of getting the coaching in place and having them feel good about it too, to make sure that they come across the way, that they come across as smart as they are, and as engaging as they are, hopefully. A lot of great presenters who are, have an audience eating out of the palm of their hands when they're on stage. You're right. They can go flat because they don't have that online.
Yes. And hey, by the way, all of you association folks out there that are watching this, and you work with facilitators, or you bring people in regularly to work with your boards, or I mean, anytime you have, and workshop leaders too. A lot of us who do workshops and facilitations have been the people who we have books about how to bring out to work on in a flip chart and stuff like that, and to do these visual presentations with a group, to bring in person. And it's very difficult when the platforms don't have all of the tools that you might want to use. They don't have all of the same features.
Right.
And so you're limited. A lot of facilitators right now, I'm hearing about it, and I'm also experiencing it. It's like trying to do their work with their hands tied behind their back. So they are, I'm seeing a lot of people grow. I'm seeing a lot of people try new things, but there's also a lot of frustration, because especially if you're someone who reads the room, who is doing that sort of, it's not psychic, but it's like this emotional, nonverbal check, can you read the room when it's this vastness that's, just across the technology? I don't know. Difficult.
Yeah. That's where the Zoomzilla comes in handy, where you can look at, 400 faces, and you get a feeling from them as you talk. So that can be a pretty effective way to do that. And so in a situation where you're trying to charge up a sales team or something like that,
Yeah.
then that can be really good, is that they get the instant feedback. That's an important part of the platform for that. When they're trying to impart, a story of some sort that would not change depending on how people react, a TED talk
Mhm.
in a way, that doesn't necessarily need that kind of connection.
Right.
And
Right.
as we get into the hybrid world, then you get a bit of both there.
Yeah. So, what about the exhibitors? We talked about the attendee experience. Another big issue, the money, right? That's when we're thinking about this. We're thinking about how are we making them happy, because a big portion of that revenue is oftentimes derived from working with our exhibitors and providing value by connecting them with leads and connections and future clients and customers. So how are we, and for sponsors too, right? So how are we creating a better experience, or how might we create better experiences for these exhibitors and sponsors of virtual events?
Well, they definitely need some love. There's no
Yeah,
doubt about it.
they do.
They are feeling, really torn apart by this sudden shift for them. And like I was
Mhm.
saying, the sales cycle is changing for them, and the way they go about communicating and educating and so on is a huge shift for them. So they're like at sea in their world, right, of how they go about it. And then what they've been able to depend on for those original leads or place to close business, suddenly it's taken a flyer too. So they're strapped that way. So we really do need to provide them with all the tools that virtual provides. So because we're getting information right from the time that people sign up for the event, why not give that to your exhibitors at that point?
Mhm.
Give them the time leading up to it to say, oh, this is somebody I should be in touch with at the event, right? Or before or after. And maybe they're sending that stuff out to them. Maybe that, oh, I should get some stuff into their um, swag box.
Right.
That goes out. There's no reason we couldn't personalize those swag boxes, really, if we'd got
Yeah.
that information ahead of time. So instead of it being a 3-day, blitz for them, now maybe it's a 2-month sales process where they make some connections ahead of time. They get their 3 days of uh, ongoing connection. Hopefully, there's those networking opportunities when they're in place. They're doing education as part of what's happening there. They're sponsoring a breakout, a break space for people so that they can get some feel good time with their attendees. And then afterwards, they've got that follow up time. Maybe they're connecting in that Facebook group, or they're connecting in um, whatever the app is for the show. I think that what we said about ongoing engagement is important, because
Mhm.
we're finding through our connection online is that it's something that happens well over time, right? You get there's an episode a week. It goes well that way. Um, so it's good to take that, but still have that bonding experience as an event, and then spread that out over maybe the whole year.
Scott Oser. Hi, Scott. Hope that everything's safe where you are. He's in California, and so it's been pretty intense on the West Coast lately. Pretty intense everywhere lately. Scott says, it's always been true, but exhibitors and sponsors now need to be able to have a presence before, during, and after the event.
Yeah.
And that's definitely the case. I think one of the challenges that we run into is that people, the data is great, but I know that a lot of sponsors and exhibitors are feeling like it's not quite enough. They're saying, hey, it's still not the same as me being able to buy that person a beer or talk with them in my booth. What are you going to do, event planner? What are you going to do, association, to make it so that I'm able to build those relationships? And Scott has another comment. As much as the event organizer needs to learn a new way of doing things and needs training on how to best do their event sponsor. Doing things. As much as the event organizer needs to learn a new way of doing things and needs training on how to best do their event, sponsors and exhibitors need to be educated on how to best use virtual events. Yes, that is so true. That's true, because you can have great opportunities, but if they don't know how to use the platform or how to really optimize their opportunity, like maximize the time that they can do one-on-ones. I know some of the platforms have these one-on-one meeting capabilities, but you still need to go into the sessions and kind of network and connect with people, even though it's virtual. And there's a lot.
And there's a lot of granular data that's available that if the exhibitor or sponsor doesn't know how to use that, if you're not making it available to them, they should be upset. And if you are making it available to them and they're not using it, what sessions did this attendee go to, right? And what of my products does that relate to?
Yeah.
And so I think that if they're not getting that data, which you're already collecting, right, then there's a mismatch. And if they're not using that data, then they haven't been trained. And maybe you need to be training them, and that's yet another role you've got now as an event planner.
Yeah, I mean, but it's true. I do feel like we're all in this, we're all becoming these lifelong learners, whether we wanted to be or not, because we're having to adapt so quickly. We're having to learn so fast. And it is like we were speaking about earlier, Hilary, I think that, we're lucky in a lot of ways that, with the silver lining is that a lot of these changes needed to happen anyway, that people were already exploring how to make the, accessibility for people. Like, that's amazing. People who couldn't travel to these in-person events before now have the opportunity to participate in them. That's beautiful. Yeah. But we still have a lot to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's promoting equity too. So, if it's less expensive, or I don't, even if I find a way to be able to afford attending this, or maybe you can make a scholarship available to someone to attend online because it doesn't really cost you anymore. Here's a way to promote equity that you didn't have before.
Right.
That somebody have to get their hotel room, you'd have, etc., their travel, all of that. All of a sudden, here's a way to get somebody there who couldn't have afforded it otherwise.
I really love that too, because it seems in keeping with some of the things that are happening for us as a whole in society. One of the questions that I had wanted to talk about before, even going live today, was this question about the transformation that's taking place in how we conduct events, how we do business, and then looking at our society at large, at the movements like Black Lives Matter. And we can also include concerns about climate change.
Absolutely.
There is an amazing focus on a lot of issues that have been raised up in the past and have not effectively been dealt with. And I feel like it's like all of a sudden we're being put to task on all of them at the same time. But
I hope we're up to it.
I know. But I guess the hidden blessing is that we are having to face some things instead of putting them off forever. But the difficulty is that uncomfortable nature of having to learn, having to fix, if something stable at this point would feel really good. And so with all of that said, as we're looking at ways that maybe the events industry has already been addressing some of these things and ongoing change that needs to happen, what are some things that you see as far as changes that have been good that have been made in the industry, and where do we still need to push to transform even more?
Well, in many ways, the changes were kind of forced upon us, so it's hard to see the good in that. But we are seeing the environment, is bouncing back in ways that we never imagined. I'm sailing the Chesapeake now, and it's not uncommon to see dolphins swimming alongside us.
Oh,
And so that's pretty exciting. That when man retreated, the wildlife came out. Um, I think that so that's a plus, is that we're making some progress on these things that you saying we got taken to task for.
yeah.
We clearly still have a lot of work to do.
Hmm.
Um, Not all the lessons have been learned. We're moving in, as I mentioned, that idea that we're working on this grant for innovation with ASAE, where we're really going to take it apart and go, okay, where can we move on to from here? What's the next place we get to? And it's something that I think that wouldn't have happened, if we weren't here. So that's kind of a plus. And
Hmm.
I think that the reevaluation that we're doing now, and this was something I started observing right at the beginning, is that even for the people who said no, we're just going to cancel, right,
Hmm.
and not have our event into 2020. Well, that gave them a whole nother year, right, to put into the planning process for 2021 that they just didn't have before.
Hmm.
And so I saw people take that as the opportunity to stop and strategize about what's really important. And I think that that has been the moment. And that is the moment we're taking forward, is that we're really looking at how to work strategically, right, to get our goals to happen.
Mm.
And all too often in this industry, it's like, I have so much to do. I have to get this done. I have to get that done. And, it's all about the doing, right, and not about the thinking, right.
Yeah.
So it's been really good to take that time. So I think that's a positive step.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I want to make sure that I get this question in because it's become a thing that I do at the end of every interview. And so in the association chat private Facebook group, there's a question of the week. Every Monday, a question of the week. And so I love to ask each week's guest on the podcast the same question that everyone's answering over in the private group. And so this week's question, you're so lucky. This week's question is, what is the best purchase that you've ever made, and what is the worst?
And I you just sent that before we got started, and I thought, there's a couple of ways that's colored, right?
Yeah,
Because you could say, well, did you get the most value out of it? Was it the best
right.
buy? Or what do you feel good about, right? And so, I'm for my best, I'm gonna have to go with my home here,
Yeah.
and I think I got a great deal on it. It's part of a community that is, I think, perhaps unique in the world, and so it is. Yeah, I'm gonna, and so it has affected me spiritually,
Oh,
emotionally, financially, and with my friends and so on too.
yeah.
So I'm gonna have to put that on the plus side,
Okay.
the very best. The very worst, and I'm sorry to say it, but it was a Toyota van Toyota's a great brand. I'm not. It's just that this particular one, I found out later, made the list of all-time lemons. You know, top 10 lemon cars. Didn't know at the time. It was like my second fully brand new car, and it was dead in 2 years.
Oh,
And I don't mean like bad. I mean like I had to sign it over to my mechanic.
take it, please.
Instead of paying for all the work he had done on it.
Oh my goodness, that is
So yeah, so that was sad.
That is terrible. Well, okay. So if people want to get in touch with you, if they want to find out more, if they want to read more about your company, where can they go?
Yep. So you can email me. That's wide open, folks. So Hilary@moonshotevent.com.
Okay.
And so, and just look at the link there, www.
Is it Moonshot?
Yeah, moonshotevent.com. So that'll give you a picture that just went live. So if there are mistakes, please just let me know. Something.
Yeah.
I think there's still some commas that had to be moved or something.
I love it. I am so thankful that you joined us today. Thank you so much.
It was totally a blast.
And we are going to bring Hilary back in the future. So if you have questions for Hilary, reach out to her, reach out to me, and we'll make sure that we get them answered for you. Before I let all of you go, I want to make sure that you knew that there is a 5-week Rock Your Flock course that is being put on with Brant Menswar. It's free to association chat members, association chat aficionados. So if you just love to listen to association chat or be a part of it, I hope that you will consider joining this 5-week course. It usually goes for $500 per person to participate in this. And these are online sessions that are happening, and there are 2 different time slots depending on which is easiest for you, wherever you're based in the world. It's either during 2 p.m. on Thursdays Eastern time, or at 7 p.m. Eastern time on Thursdays. And so it's to make it a little bit more accessible for everyone. But if you, let me put the link up here for you so that you'll be able to see that. Go ahead and check that out if you want to be a part of it. It starts October the 1st. And, you know, before I forget about it, I want to go ahead and have you check out this message from Brant Menswar himself. And then I will let you go for the weekend.
What's up to all of my association chat family? My name is Brant Menswar. I am going to be leading the Rock Your Flock Leading with Deliberate Intention course in October. And I just wanted to sort of slide into your day today to say, I want to see you there. You know, this is going to be an incredible 5 weeks together. It's free.
I'm not sure if that worked or not. Did that work?
Download the Book Thinkers app, and we are going to walk hand in hand.
You know what's crazy is that I hear him, but I'm not seeing him.
Well, my guess is all of you have organizational values that are what are supposed to be the center point.
That's
of why
fascinating.
You do what you do.
All right, so let me go ahead and try to stop that for you. I'm sorry about that, everyone. It was really impressive when we tested it earlier. But with any of that, you know how this stuff goes with tech. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So if you go to the link, if you go to the website from associationchat.com, there's a way to access information about that there. You can sign up and get your materials ahead of time. The only thing you have to buy is the book. So I hope that until next time that you keep asking questions to learn every day. As Joseph Campbell once said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. And I hope you have a fantastic week, everyone.